Thanks for staying with us this morning. We're at Mocan Chemical and Seed Company in Missouri, and we're talking to Kaleb, and you're with BASF, weed specialist.
Yes, sir. I'm an agronomist for BASF for the western half of Missouri.
Very wet spring, cool weather, wet spring makes managing weeds tough, I would imagine.
It has had some challenges, but it's also worked to our favor. The moisture has helped keep our residual chemicals activated, which has helped us prevent the water hemp and some of the other tough weeds that we fight. On the other hand, we've had in some cases too much water that has caused some other problems and leached some of those products out a little too much. So generally, if we have a good two-pass program for our customers, we've been able to really manage those weeds throughout this season.
Corn has taken off phenomenally.
Yes.
Soybeans are catching up. We got a little bit of heat after quite a bit of rain. They're taking off also. Some of the things we need to be worried about.
I've been walking a lot of fields all over the western half of Missouri, and we're in the reproductive stage of growth in our corn and our soybeans now. Things couldn't look much better in most situations, so our yield potential is really high. I would recommend that our customers walk their fields to identify other pests that can bother us during the reproductive phases, which are typically insect pests and disease pests.
Is there anything that we need to be worried about dealing with our canopies? I mean, we grew really quick, still got a little moisture on the ground.
We do. The canopy is actually working to our favor to prevent more weeds from coming up, but it's also holding a lot of moisture, which is a very positive thing. The challenge with good growing conditions and high yield potential, typically that's a canopy that's good for developing diseases, I guess, if you will, or bad for developing diseases in this case. And we really got to keep an eye on that lower canopy, because that's where they start most of the diseases, and then they move their way up through the canopy.
Any issues we're dealing with corn?
In corn, we're kind of past the stage where we can do much for that, but we did see gray leaf spot, a lot of common rust across our geography, and in some cases northern corn leaf blight.
Guys who sprayed their beans kind of burned them down a little bit. Coming back, they may have to spray again. What's our time frame on that?
We need to control those weeds before our soybeans start the R2 reproductive phase, which is basically flowering all the way to the top. After that, when we start applying any chemicals, any crop protection herbicides, we can actually reduce our soybean yields. So we have to balance that. Do we need to control more weeds, or do we want to make sure we protect the maximum yield potential we have in that field with our soybeans?
No, what about, we're standing in a wheat field that's got soybeans in it, so we double cropped. We just have a few seconds left here in our first segment. What should we be thinking about if we're double cropping?
The most important thing is to evaluate where you are with your weeds, and volunteer wheat tends to be a problem. So let's clean these fields up timely and then try to be out of them when they hit that reproductive phase.
So cleaning up timely means go ahead and get a spray down and burn that stuff down.
Spray your weeds by 1 to 2 trifoliate beans if at all possible.
Perfect. We're going to come back with Kaleb, and we're going to talk about what we should be doing to get our wheat fields ready as we start thinking about planting winter wheat next year. We'll see you in just a minute.
This segment brought to you by Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. Farmers Insurance, your best protection against the unexpected. Call Agent Dan Key at 785-408-5459. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com. Blue River Traders, the finest selection of Western-style furniture for your home. BlueRiverTraders.com.
Thanks for staying with us, Kaleb. Thank you for staying with us. If we're not double cropping into our wheat field, what should we be thinking about to get ready?
We need to start preparing for next year's wheat crop right now. We just harvested the wheat, so we need to get our seed secured, cleaned, and treated so we can start off to a good start next year. Evaluate how many seeds per pound you have so that we get off to a good start and get the right seeding rate out there. And we absolutely have to start clean and free of weeds. If you're in a no-till situation, I generally recommend that you burn that field down with something like Roundup and 1 to 2 ounces of Sharpen to get those fields cleaned up, and we don't have any weeds that we're fighting from the very beginning of the wheat.
And that was something I didn't ask in our first segment. No-till versus conventional till versus a little bit of till. I mean, managing weeds they're all going to be different, I would imagine.
They are all different, and each farmer knows what fits their operation the best. I like no-till because we can maintain a lot of the moisture that we don't typically have amply, and so that helps us maintain some moisture, but that's not for every farmer.
Right. So once we identify our seed, we know what we're going to do. We scout the field, any pre-emergence that we need to be putting down before we put that seed in the ground for wheat.
Each area is a little bit different, and some people fight different pests. We typically have more broadleaf weed pressure in western Missouri and eastern Kansas, but other areas have other grass pressures like ryegrass and things of that nature. So work with your local retailer, get a plan put together ahead of time for what you deal with in your area.
People need to be thinking also about managing how much they're putting down also. Is that a good rule of thumb? Is manage what you put down?
We have to manage the seeding rates that we put out there, because that determines what our yield potential is going to be come next spring. So I recommend that our customers evaluate those seed counts like we talked, get their drill calibrated, and pay attention as they start planting, especially if they switch varieties. Many times they can have much different seed counts per pound.
Kaleb, as we're coming into fall, give us a couple things we can take away to get ready for the wheat season.
We need to prepare our fertility plan, and I encourage growers to always prepare and try to prevent aphids in the fall, and we can do that a lot of ways. Primarily, I recommend seed treatments on the wheat that can help prevent aphids in the fall, but if you don't like or don't use seed treatments, you can also make a fall application of an insecticide to prevent aphids as we go into November and December.
And there's so many wheat variety, seed varieties out there nowadays. Picking one and sticking with it seems to be a difficult choice for some farmers.
I encourage folks to evaluate local yield tests that have been done in their area. In many cases, the university has done some, other local seed dealers have done some, and choose the varieties that work best for your geography.
Is there a website people can go to get some information that we talked about today?
They can go to BASF's Ag Products website and find out about any information about BASF products. And I always encourage people to look at some of their local university websites to find some better information too.